says we're live.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Friday, March 19th meeting of the Baltimore County House Delegation. Delegate Pat Young, Chair. We have one piece of business on the agenda, so we can, oh, look, and a baby's on here. Hello, little Erican. One bill to vote on, and just before we do that update, last week there was a request for a letter. We're putting that together. Once we have the final version of it, we'll put it out to the delegation. Since it's just a letter, we're not too worried about timeline with it, but I will have something for us for next week. With that, we're going to move to voting on HB 894, election law, polling places, and continuing care retirement communities. And I'm going to move it to Delegate Metzger to give a reminder and update from last week.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think it's 895, isn't it?
Did I say 895? Sorry.
Yeah, just to update everybody, we had a great discussion when we met on this bill, and it was some things about exactly how many polling places there were and a shall and a may. And if you remember, the good delegate withdrew the bill to bring back an amendment. And that's kind of where we're at. I was trying to get everybody together, and I verbally talked to pretty much everyone, except we didn't have a group setting to discuss it and vote it out of committee. So, and I felt as though we could discuss it today and maybe just do it because it's just a shall to a may.
That's fine, Delegate Metzger. We can we'll take it up. Since you've already met once on it, I know that there was one amendment that you talked about. We can just take it up together since we had one discussion. So is there anything else in the bill you want to add?
I think it's a good bill for a good pilot program, at least to try this out, and not a pilot program, but we got the exact number down to 12.
Got it.
And I think the delegate can share that some more.
Okay. Delegate Mangione.
Thank you, Delegate Metzger and Mr. Chair. And yes, our number was 13 from the Department of Aging, but either way. But so yes, and for those, as Delegate Metzger said, on page 1 in line 3, it strikes the language of requiring and substitutes with authorizing, and as he mentioned before, strikes shall and substitutes to may. So that was obviously that changes, and I think that should address a lot of the concerns. And of course, as with everything, we all know one of the concerns was cost, and I tried to make the point comparison to some of the other legislation bills or pieces of legislation that deal with elections that do have a cost. So I wanted to just make note of that. And with everything else that said, this bill did have a lot of support from the CCRCs, from I believe it was the NAACP that actually came in and support during the actual live hearing. We had support from the AARP and a number of different groups. So I just, with all that said, I think most of the concerns have been addressed with the amendment, and again, the part about the cost. And I think, as Delegate Metzger said, it's a good bill, and this will allow us the opportunity to see how it goes forward. So I appreciate it and would ask for a favor.
And the county is not opposed to this?
No, there was no written opposition, no opposition from the county, no.
Got it. Delegate Metzger, you had something?
I was just going to say, with that said, there's a hand raised, but with that said, I was going to move the amendment.
Okay. Delegate Jalisi, if you're okay, we're going to move the amendment and then move the bill and we'll go to discussion.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
After the amendment. Yep.
Got it.
Second.
Motion on the, you're welcome. Motion on the amendment? Rick, you made the motion on the amendment?
Yes, second. Mm-hmm.
Second. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Any discussion? Sorry, was there discussion on the amendment? Delegate Ebersol? Okay, got it. Just see the hand, that's all. All opposed? All right, on the bill as amended, is there a motion?
I make a motion.
And a second.
Second, Shalega seconds.
And discussion. Delegate Jalisi followed by Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you. I just wanted to know what the bill does now after the amendments have been added. Can somebody explain it to me? Thank you.
Delegate
Mangione, if you want, or Delegate Metzger, either one.
Yeah, sure. As Delegate Metzger was saying, so it simply allows them to to have the option. Before it mandated it, that all of the CCRCs. So now it just allows if they want, and very important note too, they would have to supply the election judges, et cetera. So that's where the change is. Again, I mean, I can, for the amendment, again, it changes the language from shall to may. So that was the big concern I think a lot of people had, if that helps answer. So it doesn't authorize for all these CCRCs to be eligible, and it just gives them an option.
No, so what it does is allows polling in these centers, and you've selected 13 locations where this pilot program is going to take place. Is that fair to understand?
I'm sorry, you kind of broke up. I couldn't hear you.
I said this bill will allow these locations to have polling locations for elections
Yeah, it
after
allows
the
them.
amendment, but
Yeah,
not
but
requires them.
We
It
don't,
does not require them now.
we
And
don't,
these are physical polling locations where people
Delegate-
can go and vote,
Delegate
and not
Metzger.
the absentee balloting, right?
Delegate Jalisi,
Yes,
it
precinct,
doesn't,
yes.
they're just the 13 that they can use.
For physical polling where people will walk up and vote like they do in other locations, right?
It's pretty much for the residents in that
The
area.
residents, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Jalisi. Excuse me, sorry, Delegate Ebersol.
Thanks. So you have a hard list of 13, and where did you get that list, please?
Yeah, thank you, Delegate. That was from the Baltimore County Department of Aging.
Thank you. Excellent. Do you have an actual list of them? I'd be most curious because I have a feeling there's several that qualify that already have a precinct. I'm very aware of one of them, Charlestown in Hillthorpe or Arbutus has a precinct already located in it. And I'm wondering how they did that without this legislation.
And that's Broadmead does as well. And part of the reason behind this was after talking to residents of Broadmead, because they really have a high voter turnout, for, especially in person. And that's a good, I don't know how they did it. That's a good question. I don't know in terms of, because I think Oakcrest, I was having a discussion with Delegate Boatler earlier in the week that Oakcrest does it as well. In terms of how they differentiate it, I'm not sure. I don't know. That's a good question. Why some are allowed and some are not. So that's part of the reason we put the bill in, is to allow others so they can have the option. But that's actually a good question.
Aren't they already allowed to then, if these have been able to obtain them and the Board of Elections has put a precinct there? It strikes me that this is something that's already being done. So I'm not clear on what this bill changes now that it's amended.
So the bill in general was to allow them all to have the option if they wanted it, because of the fact that some of these, however the precincts were made up, they were not, I guess that precinct made sense to have it there, because other
But
people.
they could request it and the Board of Elections could still say no, right?
As far as you mean in terms of the amendment?
Well, yeah, I mean, in its current condition, if one of these 13 CCRs that didn't already have a precinct were to say, hey, we think we could use a precinct here, much the way I guess the Broadmead, as you say, or Charlestown, as I say, has one, the Board of Elections could say, yes, it's an excellent idea like they did to them, or they could say, no, it doesn't really justify in this case, and this bill wouldn't change that.
Yeah, but if this bill, as a may, it basically says it has room for us to implement polling place without basically duplication. So, I mean, if that makes sense.
The last question, no, I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble sorting that out. But the last question is Delegate Metzger referred to it, it's for the residents. But in fact, you've said on the record, and it says that this wouldn't be just for residents, that this would be for, the precinct could include others. That's also something that's true at Charlestown. There's a neighborhood nearby that votes there as well. Is that all? That wouldn't change either, right? Under this bill, that would be in precisely the same stance on that.
So we had discussed, yes, about having, now in the bill, we wanted to make sure that it was for the residents, but I don't think that that would be an issue going forward, that if we had to change it or update it, that it would allow for people in the community as well.
I think that's already true. That's what I'm trying to say. But the long comment is I'm not sure what this bill is accomplishing. I feel like we're putting some words into code. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Delegate Feldmark, followed by Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few thoughts, and I think similar to what Delegate Ebersol expressed. I mean, I very much appreciate the intent of this legislation, and I appreciate the amendment because I think it does fix what my concerns were about the mandate. That being said, though, with the amendment to change it to May, I'm not sure. And I guess if I could maybe, Mr. Chair, pose a question to our delegation council, I don't know that this is authorizing or enabling anything that isn't already within the board's authority. Could we get some clarification on that? I believe, as Delegate Ebersol said, the board already has the authority to establish a polling place wherever they deem appropriate.
So, Mr. John Joyce, if you able to address that for Delegate Feldmark.
Well, if you give them the authority, makes it clearer, but may also implies may not. So as you're saying that the board doesn't have to do it.
Right, but I guess my question is, are we giving them authority that they don't already have?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Because my understanding is, as Delegate Ebersol expressed, that they do have the authority to do this. And if I appreciate that we're not mandating it, but if they already have the authority, then I'm not sure what this bill really does other than maybe send a message that we think this is a good goal and it's something we'd like them to consider, right? And that's a message I support, but that's a message we could send in a letter. We don't have to pass a law. So I'm not sure that legislation is the right way to convey to the board that we'd like them to do everything they can to increase voter access for our seniors. So that's my concern.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Delegate. And as the council said, I mean, so this is basically, it directs the Board of Elections as the intent with this bill, that they may or may not have it, but because we aren't sure, as the council said, if or not they can. But thank you, I appreciate that. And thank you, council.
Delegate Metzger, go ahead.
Yeah, and to Delegate Nino's point, this is also creating for the future, because there's many more. We're living in an age population. There's going to be more centennial people in the next 10 years than ever before, and people's living longer. So therefore, these assisted living and older populations are growing. We have one in our area as well. It's the Lowenstein building, but this is a way to create the opportunity for the future. And I understand that what's taking place.
Thank you, Delegate Hill, followed by Delegate Szeliga.
Thank you. To Delegate, have you spoken to the Board of Elections?
Yes, Delegate, I have actually, yeah.
Okay, and what do they say prevents them from, do they say they need the authority to do this?
So her concern with everything was, her main concern, like I mentioned before with everything, was the cost. The authority, she basically, I didn't ask directly the authority, maybe I should have, but she basically said something along the lines of that we would do whatever, obviously, the delegation voted on, of course, and then we would, figure out, the county would figure out how to come up with the cost, and that her goal is to do whatever she can to have more people vote. And that she even said that, which was interesting, that she would, if need be, they would be able to figure out how to juggle basically combined precincts if that made it work also. But in terms of whether your direct question, I did not pose that question, which is a good one. I was
Well,
asking.
all right. So, and I'm not, the delegates Ebersol and Feltmar are sort of, I guess we're thinking the same way. Would you mind holding the bill and finding out, can you find out if you don't know, and if they already have the authority and they could figure out how to do this if they absolutely have to, and we're simply enabling them to do what they have the authority to do, would you be willing to find out if they need this legislation at all? I mean, because I think Delegate Felbert made a good point. If we're trying to say, we really hope you'll look at this more closely, or that you'll prioritize this over some of the other decisions. We don't know the other factors they consider in making decisions. So if we're saying we want this to be a priority, it would be helpful to know if it's a priority now, if they think the number 300, it would be nice to get their input. And this is like the third week, and it would you mind that?
Well, I don't, no, I can definitely find that out. I don't know. But she didn't imply at all that they had the ability to do this without the legislation.
But they have done it, so they must have the ability to do it without the legislation.
Yeah, based on my understanding from my conversation was that this bill would basically allow all of them if they wanted to. I mean, I can try to find that out, and I can talk to the chair about if we can.
Mr. Chair, would it be
reconvene.
possible for us to invite the board to even be here to answer questions? Is that
Always, I mean, I've got no problem inviting folks.
okay? Never
motion.
mind. All right, that's fine. Okay. All right, never mind, Delegate. And
I was saying that I
Delegate
don't have a
Metzger, you were saying, Delegate Metzger, you were saying that you saw this as opening up an opportunity going forward. And I'm going to ask you the same question. What is the opportunity that's not there now?
I believe future growth for more senior housing. I believe more future growth creates the voters that we need and apparently want. As seniors love the vote, and this creates an easier opportunity for them to get there on an easier way. Some of them don't drive in these complexes. Some of them have no vehicles, so they can just come on downstairs where they don't have to get on the shuttle buses. And that's
No, I think we absolutely agree. What I'm asking is, I'm under the assumption that the board can do this now. So I'm asking you, what opportunities does this present for the board to establish these that they don't have already?
Well, quite simply, if we create the legislation for them to go forward, they'll have it in place. I think outside the box always, and I think that this gives a real clear path forward.
And what's stopping them now from doing this?
I think, well, I'm gonna be very honest with you. I'm not sure that they have the authority to do that. The legal counsel, he's as aware as I am.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Mr.
We're
Chair.
gonna move on to Delegate Shaliga, followed by Delegate Cardin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm surprised we're having this conversation when today, this session, we've done so much to improve access to voting and reduce barriers for people to get to the polls. We passed a bill about moving bus stops. We've done so many things that the MTA could have done that without us, but we passed that bill to be instructive. So if we're favoring people who use mass transit over seniors by our policies here, I'm a little confused that we're taking these actions. So many bills we pass are instructive. I mean, Delegate Hill, your bird bill, your bird safe building bill could have been done with a letter. We've had it 4 years. So, you know, there's no precedent that we're setting here. I support this bill wholeheartedly to ensure that our seniors have fair access. And, you know, this is instructing the Baltimore County Board of Election that our priority is that our seniors in Baltimore County who live in these kind of special CCRCs, it's not a nursing home, it's a very specific legislatively formed type of senior housing community, that we are saying that the Board of Elections should be friendly and assist them and reduce barriers for them setting up a polling place. That this is not hard. I'm just very shocked that so many people here are trying to deny access to senior citizens, especially those folks that really need help getting to the polling place. So I resist any holding the bill for another week. I mean, this is crossover, and we know the delay tactics. I think this bill should move out. We should tell the senior citizens of Baltimore County they're a priority for us, that they have access to voting, and the barriers have been decreased. And we care about mass transit, so we also care about them.
Thank you, Delegate Szeliga. Delegate Cardin, followed by Delegate Forbes.
Mr. Chairman, I hope you guys can all hear me. I can hear you, but I can't see you, but I think you can see me. A lot of my questions were answered by, or asked and answered by Delegate Ebersol. I'm okay with the bill. I just have one question. I think this is really for council. And if it's the right answer, I'd be willing to vote for it. And that is this, when we say that this is a may, so it's enabling, does that mean that if the community center wants to have it, the state board is required to, or the county board is required to give it to them? Or does it mean that the county board is just going to be able to do it at any of these 13 places, but they get the authority to decide which ones and when? That's really my question.
Council, you go ahead and unmute yourself.
It's the latter, Delegate, I think.
Okay, it's the latter. So this is up to the county board has the authority to decide yes or no for each one of these, and they can do it, but they don't have to. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then I have no problem, because I don't think it does anything, but it does send a good message, and that's fine. Okay, good.
Delegate Young.
Forbes, stand by, Delegate Long. Delegate Forbes, followed by Delegate Erickson.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Delegate Mangione. I appreciate the intent of the bill, and I appreciate the amendment. I know the precincts of Broadmead and Oakcrest and Charlestown are really well trafficked and well used, and they're used both by the communities of the people that live there and there are neighborhoods nearby that use them. I wondered if your list of 13 is broken down geographically, because just sitting here, I've jotted a list of 4 CCRCs that are within a half mile of my house. And so I wondered whether the Board of Elections would then be putting up 4 more precincts like in each of those, or could, and how they would pick among those 4. So I think that clearly by Broadmead and Oakcrest and Charlestown having precincts, this is already possible, but I guess Delegate Cardin's question answered that the Board of Elections would have the ultimate say in where we do this, but I wondered whether you have that list of 13 to share.
I can certainly email that over, no problem. And she touched on that for the locations that the polling places that only have a few people and how they turn them into one precinct, the woman from the Board of Elections. So I don't know if that was something, how she would handle that. That's a good question. Again, it would help if she was able to answer some of those, but yeah, that's how she mentioned it. I can send over the 13 of them to you or into the delegation. No problem at all. As a matter of fact, I'm texting him now to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Delegate Erickson, followed by Delegate Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So really shocking stuff I'm hearing here. I mean, if this bill had a D next to the title versus an R, I'm sure we wouldn't even be having this discussion, number one. Number two, the NAACP comes to my committee a fair amount, but they don't come on every bill. And when they do, it's because they actually like a bill. Okay, so that's number two. And number three, I can tell you exactly the difference that this bill will take. There are already standards in place to help the election board decide where to locate precincts. We don't have that list of factors, but they already have factors that they look at. This bill will say, don't listen to the factors. Please offer these to our CCRs. That's what this bill does. So it is not redundant. They don't already have the authority. We're telling them, you may ignore the factors that you are currently using to establish precincts, and you may put them in these locations. And it doesn't say they have to do it for the surrounding community. The idea behind this is to allow older folks who struggle to move around to easily be able to vote in person, because that's how older folks like to vote. So again, if this was a Democrat bill, we would not be having this discussion. And it's really, really irritating that we are so anti-voting when it happens to happen.
Delegate Erickson, do you have a question?
No, that's my just opinion.
Understood. Appreciate it. Want to make sure too that this is just a discussion related to the motion and on the bill. Everybody has their opinions, and I think that's what sounds like folks just trying to make sure not being redundant. But at the same time, I do believe this bill does send a message to community centers and retirement centers that they can empower themselves to pursue the board. So with that in mind, I'm going to go to Delegate Long for the last question. Excuse me, Delegate Brooks, then Delegate Long with the final question. Delegate Brooks, if we lost you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just lost connection for a second there. Delegate Mangione, what is the inspirational influence behind the bill? Were you approached by some constituents or what?
Yeah, thank you, Delegate Brooks. So a lot of discussion. I honestly didn't expect a lot of it. So what happened is, before obviously coronavirus, I've spoke with a lot of members of Broadmead who's very active. They're very active with, of course, voting. They have political forums. And what they do at the CCRC is they are able to vote there. And it is a high turnout in person, which a lot of seniors love to vote in person. I think we all can acknowledge that when we've met with these people, and they're very civically engaged. And that was the idea. And Senator West had actually proposed this last year, and we worked a little bit together on it. And that's where I got the motivation to do it again, because I met with these people, or I'm sorry, it was 2 years ago, not last year, where Senator West put it in. So just firsthand accounts with talking with people that want to be able to stay engaged, not have to worry about getting picked up by a loved one to drive to a polling place if you're 80 years old, and maybe rainy, cold weather. So they have the ability to walk somewhere in the facility, cast their vote in person like they've done so many times. And to allow that to happen was the motivation for this, because I remember, as mentioned before, because there is that, I believe it was Delegate Crosby's bill about the busing lane or the bus routes and et cetera. We heard some of the, and I totally understand where it came from, some of the concerns, that they're already able to do this. Well, they can already get a ride or send an absentee ballot, but getting a ride again, I talk to these people, they don't want to have to rely on having to leave the facility on a rainy, cold day in November to go cast the vote in person. So that was kind of the idea. If we want to really be serious about helping our seniors, which we always talk about, especially during election time, here was a simple bill. At least I thought it was a simple bill, which is why I was confused by some of the, and I understand completely concerns, but this was and especially now, it simply gives them and hammers home the point that this is something we want them to have the option of.
Okay, yeah. And I noticed it was introduced last year too. I think it was HB 1107. Do you know what happened there?
So last year it came in a little later, and then with everything that happened, I can't even remember if we even had it in this hearing or not, because of coronavirus stuff.
Right. Okay.
So
all right.
Everything fell
Thanks.
short. Yeah.
Delegate Long, final
thanks,
question.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Delegate Long, final question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the big things that I've heard that I want to clarify, did you say that they would supply or pay for the poll workers?
the CCRC's delegate would be responsible for that, or else they wouldn't be eligible.
Okay, so that's going to be a cost savings to the county, correct?
Yes, that would certainly help.
Now, can they do that now? I don't think they can they?
No, I think the county has to supply the poll workers.
Okay, so we're talking about cost savings for the county because now we're going to supply poll workers. And I agree, we need to think about our seniors, having to leave, walking from the senior center to a bus or a car or whatever, getting in, getting out, have to wait in line. I mean, our seniors have worked hard, paid taxes. Let's give them a break. I like this idea. I think it's a great idea. I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Delegate Long. I'm going to go ahead and move to a roll call vote. I've been going in one direction for long enough, so I'm going to switch it up. So try not to get caught off guard. On the favorable motion on the bill as amended, Delegate Shalega,
Yes.
Delegate Stein, excuse, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I explain my vote?
Stand by. Sorry, did you make your vote? What was it?
Could I explain my vote?
Go ahead and make it, then you can explain it.
Thank you. I'm voting yes. I do
Okay.
have hesitations because I do think that this bill doesn't do anything, and I would have liked to get some clarification from the Board of Elections. But I think Delegate Erickson makes a really good point that there are specific things that the Board of Elections, specific criteria that the Board of Elections has, and that this at least sends them a message that, that this is important to us. And if they can make it work, that we would like to expand voting wherever possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Metzger.
Yes.
Delegate Mangione.
Yes.
Delegate Long.
Yes.
Speaker Jones. You're muted, ma'am.
I'm trying to undo it. I guess, although I don't think the bill does anything, and I think that the State Board of Election has to certify workers, can't just put, anyway. So, yeah, I guess.
Got it. Delegate Jalisi.
Yes.
Delegate Jackson. Absent. Delegate Impalaria. Absent. Delegate Hill.
Explaining my vote, I think Delegate Erickson gave the information that I was trying to get. I think I hope Delegate Shalega will keep in mind what she said the next time she's on the floor, and I'll vote yes. Thank you.
Delegate Guyton. Delegate Kramer.
Yes, sir.
Delegate Forbes.
Yes.
Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the points that Delegate Erickson raised. I actually am not sure that the bill does that. I think if we want to change the criteria that the Board of Elections looks at, we should look at addressing the criteria the Board of Election considers in establishing a polling place. I think it's not great practice to be passing legislation that doesn't actually do anything, but if this sends a message that we think this should be considered, I'm willing to vote for it, although I hope we'll follow up with something a little more meaningful in terms of working with the Board of Elections. I'll vote yes.
Thank you, Delegate Ebersol.
So I don't see why we would put words into code that don't do anything. The conversations that have been made about allowing seniors to vote and increasing their accessibility are good words, and I believe in those. And I think we need to increase accessibility. I don't think this bill does anything to do that. And so what we're doing is we're creating false hope among those groups that they'll get precincts because we pass a bill like this. I believe that the equivalence that was drawn between us actually drawing new bus lines, and here we're not actually creating new precincts, is a false equivalence in this case. I heard the word this is going to ensure that voters have that seniors have better access. This does not ensure anything of the sort. And so I'm disturbed that we are putting in extra words into code that ultimately will not accomplish the goals. I think it is a laudable goal that we try to increase voter access. I don't think that goal is accomplished here. But all that said, I'm one to go along with my colleagues. If they feel that this is something we should pass, and I feel that most people have voted, I'm going to vote yes. But I think we should have written a letter instead that we sent a message. Everybody said this sends a message. Through code, we send a message through messages. But my vote is yes.
Delegate Cardin.
I think the bill really does much, so I usually don't vote for those kinds of things, but I think that as I said earlier, I have no problem with the bill. So of course, I already said I'm going to vote yes, so I'm voting yes.
Delegate Cardin, sorry, Delegate Brooks.
I too wonder whether or not, is really needed. I think people who want to gain access to voting, because I think the law says within a half a mile of a polling place, that you won't put up another poll. But to go along with everybody else, I'll say yes, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Buller.
Yes.
Delegate Bandari.
Yes.
Delegate Belcastro.
Yes.
Delegate Erickson.
Yes.
Chair votes yes.
Delegate Stein's in the room, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Stein, would you like to be recorded on HB 895, election law polling places at continuing care retirements?
Yes, and I'll vote yes. Thank you.
$20 in the affirmative, the bill passes. Thank you all for the discussion. And that ends our business for this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And adjourned.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.